Hello and welcome to the M.B.Om podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. M.B.Om is a proud part of the Wander Barn podcast network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at M.B.Om, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about M.B.Om behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created M.B.Om. M.B.Om helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where M.B.Om Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy M.B.Om and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the M.B.Om podcast. I'm very excited that you've decided to join me for today's episode of the show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by OfferingTree, an all-in-one, easy-to-use online business platform that I've been working with for years. If you're looking to save time, energy, and money, check out OfferingTree. Don't forget to grab your special discount at offeringtree.com/MBM. And stay tuned to hear a little bit more about OfferingTree a little later on in this episode. All right, now on to today's episode of the show. I am very excited to be joined by Amy Roeher from The Yoga Hut. Amy is a yoga teacher with a small backyard yoga studio and an online membership platform. She's also an Ayurvedic wellness consultant and an Airbnb host. In this episode, Amy shares how she's been building her business over the last few years and then how she pivoted and diversified her yoga business when the pandemic hit. She talks about how having multiple income streams has benefited her over the last year, how she's been able to juggle it all, and what she's learned through the process. And I'm really excited to share this episode because I'm a big fan of having multiple income streams in your business. And I really learned firsthand how important this can be in a time of crisis or craziness over this past year when, things were changing. And Amy's going to talk all about how she did this in her business and what she's learned along the way. So there's lots of amazing things that we're going to cover, and I'm very excited to share this episode. So without further ado, here is Amy. Welcome to the podcast today, Amy. I'm really excited to have you here with me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And where are you joining me from today?
I am tuning in from actually sunny but cold Ontario, Canada today.
Amazing. Well, welcome, fellow Canadian. I always love having fellow Canadians on the show.
Yeah. We were just chatting before about the weather, and I know that you understand what the cold winter means here.
Yes, absolutely. I've lived many a cold Canadian winters in my lifetime, although not recently, thankfully, but I've definitely had my fair share of them. And I'm curious if we can start by just talking about your yoga story. Can you tell me a little bit about how you first got into yoga?
Sure. So it's quite the journey, but to try to keep it brief, but still detailed as far as what really led me down the path. I had been practicing yoga actually probably when I was about 21 or so. I had practiced a little bit. And then when I was 21, I was in a car accident. I was actually on a scooter in Taiwan and got hit by a car and unfortunately had pretty bad whiplash. I broke my arm and had to come back to Canada abruptly. And it was recommended that I start yoga when I was ready, like when my cast came off, to start rehabilitating. And I fell in love, of course, and it really did help me get my strength back. It helped me with my pain, it helped just get more movement, mobility, and really helped my back as well. And so it's like, okay, this really was something that I could see was helping me. And I continued in my 20s, my early 20s. I worked on cruise ships. And so I would like get off in port and go find a yoga studio. And I would say it was still a pretty fairly physical practice. Like physically, I knew I just felt so much better, but there was underlayings of, I just felt more calm, more centered, but I didn't really understand all of that at that point. And then it wasn't until I was about 27. I was back in university. I went back to school to go for business, and I moved out east in Canada and lived there for 5 years. And being a university student, of course, you go through a lot of stress, and yoga was really helping me cope. But I was still going through a really stressful period, and I actually went into a health crisis, pretty scary. And I woke up one day and I could barely move my body. I could barely get out of bed. It started going into my hands, my feet. And then within a couple weeks, it was like all the joints in my body were on fire. Basically, it was hard to even get to the bathroom in the morning, and I'd have to take a shower for a half hour just to warm up. And it was not a very fun place to be. And I dealt with that kind of pain for about a year before I was fully diagnosed. I was actually diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease. But yoga really was my saving grace. And it always gets me a little emotional when I think back to that, and I think a lot of yoga teachers actually come into yoga for some sort of reason like this. Like, it was helping them so much cope that they just knew they had to explore why. And for me, I was going to yoga almost every day during that really hard time in my life. And I would feel, on a pain scale, I would feel like 60 to 70% better once I would go to a yoga class. So I knew, if it was helping me this much in just 1 hour of time a day, why was it helping me so much? And what would happen if I would explore and learn all there was to know about yoga? And so I really started pursuing the training to become a yoga teacher for my own healing journey and my own practice. I thought maybe I would teach. I'd always wanted to be a teacher, and that's why I went to Taiwan to teach English. But that really wasn't my focus at that point. It was just to give my own body and mind this chance to have time to reflect and time to heal. And so I took that leap of faith. I think it's not funny, but important to mention, I had no money at this time. I had just finished university. I was just starting to work, and simultaneously going through this, health crisis. But I started to reflect on, if it's possible, there's got to be a way. And so I started putting that message out there. And within, a few weeks of really reflecting and setting that intention, the money came to me. And that's how it all started. And so I quit my job. I was finishing a contract. And I moved, well, you'll know. So I was in New Brunswick in Canada going to school, finished that my schooling, finished my job contract, moved back home briefly to Ontario, basically put all of my things in a storage unit. And then I moved to the Bahamas for 3 months. And the yoga training was 28 days, but I stayed for 2 months after to really just give myself time to absorb and integrate everything I had learned. And I stayed for karma yoga, which is one of the paths of yoga. So really just volunteering my time there, but also getting to just be in this amazing environment. It was an ashram, just being around really incredible, supportive, like-minded people. And I did a lot of healing there. And then slowly, like when I came back to Ontario, I slowly started teaching. And I really had to find my own place because I was still on this healing journey and I didn't fit into the mold, so to say, of what, maybe a typical yoga teacher would look like because I had a lot of restrictions physically that I couldn't practice the same way I did before. But I knew that in a way there had to be other people who were feeling like that as well, that they would go to a class and maybe be discouraged because they couldn't do everything or they had to learn how to do a lot of modifications. And so I really started going down that path of learning more restorative yoga, gentle yoga. I eventually got certified in a therapeutic based yoga and then also chair yoga and trauma informed yoga. And that's really what's become my niche. And it's really cool to look back and see how all the dots connected. You can't always see the dots connecting looking forward, but when you get to this place where I have such gratitude for the journey and having had to go through that really challenging, difficult experience, I probably would have never taken this huge shift in my life. And yoga is just really helped me peel back the layers to a place where I'm more whole, more free, more in tune with like what I want to be, what I want my life to look like and helping to serve others and really pay that back to those who are maybe at a place where I was or just looking, for more gentle yoga and trauma informed yoga practices.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Amy. And I think that
Yeah.
one of the reasons I love like hearing these stories is because as yoga teachers, it's like we've all come to this place of sharing this practice with others. And we all
Mhm.
have this story that's really influenced us to get there. And I think that our story kind of becomes our why a little bit and informs a lot of our teaching, which I can really clearly hear with your story. So definitely appreciate hearing that. And I would love to hear a little bit about like once you got back from teacher training and you dove into teaching, can you talk a little bit about what that looked like and how your business has evolved from there?
Yeah. So when I came back, as I'm sure many yoga teachers can relate, or maybe you're new to teaching and this is where you're at. I was just trying to get some experience. So I started teaching friends and family, of course. And then I think my first teaching job was at a community center and then a couple yoga studios. And so I was teaching maybe 2 or 3 classes a week. And then I started a part-time job because I had a background in recreation and leisure. So I started working at a community center in recreation, and I was really trying to make the yoga, thing happen. But financially, it was really tough, and I eventually went back into corporate. I have a background in recreation, but then also business. And prior to going to do my yoga training, I was working as an employment consultant. So I went back into that field and within probably like a couple of months, I was in a car accident again. And I went back into another health crisis. But in a way, looking back again, I really see that it was like life giving me this nudge of not being in the right place and knowing that that job probably wasn't going to be forever. And it really wasn't what I wanted to ultimately be doing. So I took a short leave of absence, and the house that my husband and I live in, so we were renting it at that time from my stepdad actually, and he had a shop that it was like vacant and it had been like a storage shop. And I just got this idea one day of like, why don't we renovate that into a little yoga studio where I could start teaching clients, but it would, financially be a really good thing as well. And I know not everyone has that opportunity. So I was really lucky that we had a space that I could convert into a studio. And that's what we did. And so I eventually, fully left that job and started my yoga business. So it's called the Yoga Hut. And my focus was really on private clients. I saw this need and um, knowing that I had been through that journey, knowing there was going to be others, but also I had a couple people reach out to me to do private yoga. And so that really became my focus for those first few years of my business, is teaching private classes and programs. And then I would have a couple, small groups here and there. And that's slowly grown over time. And now I've got an online membership, which really this last year has given me a lot of um, space to pivot online. Of course, like we're in lockdown right now, and probably, hopefully not when this is airing, but we went through 2 lockdowns here in Ontario, Canada this year. And it's been a great thing in the sense that I've pivoted online, and now I have a really great basis to continue that work online through my membership and having private clients online as well.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear about your business and how you started with privates and really helping people with that gentle yoga and that trauma informed yoga. And I'm sure that that was really like serving a need for your community. And I think that the last year has been very, very strange for a lot of us. And I think that just looking at the yoga industry in particular, I mean, I think that it's like really amazing that we're able to take our services and our offerings online, but it also means like really changing the way that you do business. And I know that you've pivoted in a big way. Can you talk a little bit about like, let's look back up to like March 2020, like the world is shutting down. I know I was back in Canada. We were in complete lockdown in Alberta too. I think all of Canada was at that point. And just talk about kind of like what you did with your business and how you made these changes to take yourself online.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was quite the year. Like obviously being shut down in March, April. I think that it wasn't until the summer, but what I actually did, so it's kind of twofold here. I didn't go back to teaching in person until after the summer, and because I have a small studio space, which I primarily teach privates, but I was teaching like a couple group community classes, so all of those shut down. But I decided to not go back to teaching indoors, and I actually connected with my friend who has a farm and she has a market, and we had actually talked about this, ironically enough, before COVID even happened, about doing some outdoor yoga events throughout the summer at her farm. And so I will say that the second part of this is 2 years ago, I converted our studio, like the yoga studio, into an Airbnb on weekends. And so I had been doing that for the last 2 years, just on weekends. And we saw this, like, we live in a pretty small town, but there was so many people coming to our area. And friends and family were like, who would come to our town? But people travel everywhere. And we live close to Lake Erie as well. So that's kind of an attraction. So what I decided to do this summer was just keep the Airbnb available. And it created a lot more capacity, like, because usually with my yoga classes, I would block certain times for yoga. So the Airbnb was only available on weekends. Whereas with this format, it was available all summer. So we got booked up pretty much all summer long. We had a couple stay with us for the whole month of August. So it was really interesting to see the demand in a way that we hadn't been able to before, because I always had it blocked. And then I moved my teaching outdoors. So that was good. Like financially, things were really thriving throughout the summer. And then we went back into, as like I had to stop teaching outside, the restrictions here were only allowing us to be 9 feet apart. So I kind of got to this point where I couldn't do any group classes. I was still teaching privates, but a lot of my clients who either couldn't afford private or didn't want to do private yoga, they were like, well, how can we keep practicing? And so I had a few of them start asking me about online classes. And I'd always known that, I should be moving online, but this was really where it was time to make that decision. And I did a survey, like I surveyed some of them and made sure that there was a big enough demand for it. And a lot of them are ready to move online. So I was also doing a mastermind course which was one of the best decisions I made last year, was really investing in myself to be able to, build these platforms online and make sure I was doing it properly and have all the tech support to get me through that and be around others who had done these sort of things as well, memberships and courses. And so I think it was in November that I started the membership. And yeah, I was so happy with how it went, because there's always that little bit of like, you have to take that leap of faith. It's like you can't logically have all the answers. There's a little bit of like just leaning into the unknown. And it's been going really well ever since, and it's continuing to grow, but it's a great way. And I know my clients and community are really happy that they have a format to practice and stay connected. It's actually called Connected. So yeah, that's a little bit about how the membership was born. And then I've just made sure I have all the tech things as far as being able to offer private yoga as well, like having my schedule and email and booking systems and payment systems online. It's been a lot to get that up and running. But now that it is, it's like, why did I not do this sooner? It feels so good to have all of these things set up where I can, be virtually working with people. I signed up my first client in the UK a couple weeks ago, and it's like this would have never happened prior to COVID. So there's a lot of silver linings that have come for sure by pivoting and just, taking the best of what I can with these times that we're in, and really focusing on where I want to go from here, and just having space in my calendar to do these kind of things and not overbook myself, because that's a big transition I've made over the last few years, is like letting go of teaching multiple classes where I never had the time or energy to be able to do these kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all of that. So thank you so much for sharing. There were a couple of things that stood out to me as you're talking. One, I think it's really cool that you have been using the space was your yoga studio or your yoga space for your clients as an Airbnb. I think that's like such a unique idea, just to set that up on the weekends. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes a lot of sense to look at where there's the most demand and how you can pivot. And in a time where, a lot of people have uncertain financial situations, it's nice to have, the extra finances coming in and the
Yeah.
financial certainty and whatnot. So I think that that's just a really sort of amazing side hustle that you've had on the go. And the other thing too that I think is really interesting is or something that I want to bring forward is the idea of, people say that they want something surveying them, make sure there's enough interest, and then going from there. And I think that that's a really great strategy for our yoga businesses. If you're kind of getting the inkling that there's something you might want to pivot into, or your students are kind of, giving you these little hints that they might want something, being able to actually ask them these questions, I think is pretty big, and then go
Yeah.
from there. The other thing that you brought up that I love is around the mastermind and just investing in yourself. This is something that I've always been trying to bring home in a lot of episodes with M.B.Om, is this idea of, investing in ourselves and our businesses. And I think that bringing like-minded people into your life is a really great way to be able to learn and grow and just help your business thrive. And I think there's always a reason not to invest in ourselves. But when we do, or at least I know from my experience, whenever I do, it's like so worthwhile.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes to all of that. It was, really scary to invest that kind of money into myself, during a pandemic, but honestly, like it was the best thing I could have done. And, I'm fortunate that like I had a great summer financially, that I could put a little bit of that money back into, investing in myself. But the things that I was able to get off the ground. So first of all, helping me really with that membership and making sure from the tech side that everything was flowing and done the right way. That was a blessing. And then I also hosted my first virtual wellness retreat. And that's something I've always wanted to do, to really give people like an integrative offerings as far as like the healing journey. And so I had, to name a few, like I had a financial advisor, like a money mindset coach, a naturopath, a sleep expert, um, a transformational trauma coach, a dietitian, holistic nutritionist. There was a few others. So it was a big undertaking, but something that, like, I look back and I just can't believe that I was able to do all of those things in a short period of time. But it was really being around like-minded women. It was all women in the course, who were doing like big things like this. And were happy to help and like offer their feedback and suggestions, and we all bounced ideas off of each other. And so it was, you can't help but up level when you're around like really positive people in this space who are um, on that journey with you. And so that alone, I had a lot of friendships that I will continue, and just a lot of support that I needed to really move online and get things going up and running as fast as I could, but in a way that felt really like grounded at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I hear that for sure. And I'm curious if we can dive in a little bit more into the online side of things, because I think at this point, most of us are kind of in this online world. And it's so interesting
Mhm.
because I've heard from so many people similar to yourself who said things like, I've wanted to create a YouTube channel, or I've wanted to create an online membership, or I've been wanting to do online videos, and it's just never been the top priority. And then boom, March 2020 hits and everyone's done it within 2 weeks, or even less time than that. Like you could say some people did it in 24 hours, 48 hours, 1 week type thing. And I mean, the whole situation that we're in right now with the pandemic is really, really awful in many
Yes.
ways. But like you said, there are silver linings. And I think that this situation forcing our yoga businesses online in some ways does have a lot of positives, because you mentioned having a client in the UK. And I'm sure you have lots of clients outside of your town in Ontario that you maybe never would have reached. And I would love to hear a bit more about like what this actually looks like for you, like how you set it up, what platforms you're using, how your
Mhm.
classes look, all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's like, how can we take, the times that we're in, and try to make the best of it? And for me, it's like, I really want to still be able to serve my clients in a time that they really need these practices. And the way that I've done it is I've created, right now, it's a private Facebook group. And I offer a weekly yoga class. So a weekly half the class, I do an audio meditation, and then I have a monthly guest speaker, which has been really well received, and just having some variety and bringing experts into the group. So they receive, like, I do a calendar at the beginning of the month. I send it out the week before. So they have access to that. And then they can tune in live on Zoom, but I also stream it into the Facebook group. But if they can't watch it live, then all of the videos are in the library on Facebook. So that's been something that people are really enjoying and thankful for, because not everyone's schedules is always going to align. So that's been working well versus the model of, having a set schedule and people pay as they go. I know that that's working for some people, but for me, I'm really focusing on building a community, and having that grow and be, a residual thing that happens every month, that I don't have to keep promoting every single class. I mean, I do, but I think from a time management perspective, it saves me a lot of time of just creating the schedule and then focusing on building relationships and, inviting people to a free class here and there, and letting them know the value of what's within the group. So they can pay via, right now I have it set up where they can pay via Stripe. So that's a payment platform that I think is available in all countries. So you can have Stripe, like you can be the holder of Stripe in all countries, and then they can also pay via e-transfer if they're local to me or in Canada.
Amazing. That sounds awesome. And so in the Facebook group, do you do like the schedule updates and the links for classes? And is that kind of like the hub for the membership?
Yeah, so I always do updates within the Facebook group, but what I've noticed works best is actually sending them like a group email a few weeks before the end of the month, and I'll let them know what's coming the month ahead. And then I'll send out what I've been starting to do to just keep that connection and make sure everyone's got all the information. Because the one thing with Facebook is sometimes posts can get lost, right? Like not everyone, just with the algorithms and whatnot, not everyone sees everything. Um, so email is like a great way to make sure they're getting that info in real time. So I'll send like a weekly update and let them know a few things that happened the week before, what's coming, make sure they have the links, so that it's all within their inbox as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a really good idea because I feel like the Facebook algorithm is very perplexing and
It
very
is
hard to kind of figure out.
even
Yeah.
in a small group, like there's not, it's you wouldn't think it would be as bombarded with a small private group, but some of the things still get lost. So eventually I want to move it onto a platform like Teachable or Podia or Kajabi, but I'm also working, I want to build a course this year. So I'm really focusing on, the Facebook thing's working great right now. And then when I get the course ready to go, I want to move the membership onto that same platform.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds awesome that you're working on a course. And yeah, I think one thing, and this is something for myself as well, like this is not me speaking from a place of like, I've mastered this at all. But one thing I think it's important for us to remember is like, we don't have to have it all figured out in order to put something out into the world. And this is actually something that I really say as a reminder to myself, because I can get stuck in those like nitty gritty details of like, what platform is it on? And like, what does the logo look like? And
Mhm.
whatnot. Sometimes we just have to take that step of putting it out there into the world and kind of allowing it to take shape as we go.
Absolutely. And that's really why I started with Facebook is I knew that I could get it up and going. And I had a couple of the other members within my mastermind who have been running very successful memberships in Facebook for years. So that kind of affirmed to me that, it's just getting it out there. Like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to iron the kinks out as you go. And that's what I've really learned over these last few months is like these weekly email updates are great. Just, checking in with them periodically, making sure they're enjoying the membership, answering any questions, and just giving them notice like the month ahead so they know it's coming because they can cancel the membership at any time. But I have also what I would suggest if someone's looking to do this is having like a subscription model, which you can do via Stripe, or they can pay for a year and you give them a little bit of savings. So I've had about 5 or 6 of my members do that, pay for the year, which was really affirming as well, knowing that, within the first few months of the membership, they were enjoying it much and saw the value in keeping it for a year. So that's a few options that you just give people, a chance to pay by the month or have a little bit of savings if they invest in an annual membership as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Hey everyone, we're just taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about OfferingTree. I wanted to remind you about the special discount you can get with OfferingTree. I love telling yoga teachers about OfferingTree because not only is it your one-stop shop for all things that you need in your yoga business, but it is also easy to use, it's affordable, and it's truly an amazing company to work with. OfferingTree lets you sell courses, run classes, manage memberships, and so much more with just one account. That's right, just one login for all those parts of your business. One of the best parts about OfferingTree is their online store. You can sell digital content like yoga videos, challenges, and courses right from your website. If you're teaching yoga classes and looking to level up, selling digital content is the next step to growing your business. Over the last year, we've seen so much pivot and change happen in the yoga industry, and having your own unique yoga business where you offer your students different course material can be so beneficial in creating a sustainable business with diversified income. And while there's many different platforms that you can create courses on these days, OfferingTree's course tools are easy to use and they're really affordable. And if you have a website you already like, you can still use OfferingTree. But there's one other thing I want to tell you about OfferingTree that makes all the difference in the world to me and probably to you too. They're a company that truly cares about yoga teachers and the wellness industry overall. I chose to partner with OfferingTree because I love the product and I love the people. Whenever yoga teachers have a suggestion for something that they need out of the platform, they can reach out directly to the people at OfferingTree and they're actually heard. So much of the development that OfferingTree has gone through over the last year has been because of yoga teachers like yourself. So if you're looking to save time, energy, and money in your yoga business, OfferingTree is hands down the software for you. Go to offeringtree.com/M.B.Om to learn more and get your discount. Okay, let's get back to the episode. And I'm curious if we can dive into some of the business lessons that you've learned just throughout your career in general, or specific to the last year, whatever is kind of resonating most for you. But just like, what have you learned that you want to share with listeners today?
Oh, that's such a multi-dimensional question.
I know it's like the hardest question, right?
Yeah.
Like, tell me everything you've learned as a yoga teacher.
Yeah. One thing, not just last year, but over the last 6 years, looking back, is I think it's really valuable to diversify your income streams. And that's something that a few years ago, I really started leaning into, because I just got to a point in my business where I was trading time for money. And if I wasn't teaching, 10 yoga classes, my income was completely tied to the amount of classes I was teaching. So I knew there had to be a better way. And that's where I started the Airbnb. First of all, I had this kind of light bulb moment. We love traveling. I used to work on cruise ships. So it was like a way that I could keep that hospitality piece of me that I really always enjoyed, and just getting creative, right? And it really comes down to what is your zone of genius? What lights you up? And for me, it is travel. I also am really interested in, nutrition and the other aspects of yoga and lifestyle. And so I partnered with a network marketing company as well 2 years ago. And I know some people might have, their own ideas of what that is, but it's been an amazing venture that I've been able to do alongside my yoga business. And it's created a really steady stream of income that's allowed me. So I kind of have these three things now, the Airbnb, the yoga, actually now the online yoga, and then the social marketing company. And those are 4 streams of income that when one of them has to close down, my income doesn't totally fall apart. And so that's something I would definitely recommend. We all have different areas of strength. So it's really sitting down to think about what you enjoy most, what lights you up, and then building an income stream around that. Another thing I would say is just consistency in, showing up and, whether that's, doing your emails or your marketing or a newsletter or, little posts on Instagram or Facebook. It's just that little bit of consistency over time is what will yield those effects, 2 years from now. And I see that I wasn't always super consistent in the beginning. And now I see that that's what people want, right? They want to come listen to your podcast because they know that you're consistently putting that out there. And so that's something that I really try. It's not doing a million things a day, but it's what can I just do consistently that I enjoy? That's also serving my community. What else? And I just think finding your niche, simplifying, like I said, not doing a million things, but what are the few things that you do really well that are unique, that a specific person is going to come to you because they know that you're kind of that expert in that area, as opposed to trying to be the yoga teacher that teaches all kinds of yogas to all kinds of people. I mean, at the end of the day, we do, and the right people are going to find you. But I find the more I've narrowed in on teaching, accessible yoga, trauma-informed yoga, gentle yoga, the more I'm finding the right people and they're finding me as well.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
love
that
all of
answers
those
your
tips.
question.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. And I think diversifying your income is one that really aligns with me and kind of some of
Yeah.
my beliefs as well. And I often say that I'm multi-passionate, and I know that people in my accountability groups and stuff are always like, you're doing too many things for too many people. And I'm like, but I just have such a hard time. Niching is something that I really, really struggle with. Like getting really specific in a niche and then also not doing too many things. But one thing that I actually like felt really grateful for when the pandemic hit in my life was the fact that I did have income from a couple different sources. Like I also run a travel podcast, and when all of our ads got canceled there, it was nice to know that I had income still coming in from this podcast and this
Yeah.
side of business. And there's been times where the yoga space has been less lucrative than the travel side of things and whatnot. So it is nice to
Yeah.
have things from a couple different areas. Plus, it just keeps me interested also, which sounds like maybe for you as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like we're not, I think in the beginning, and I actually really learned this through, even after had my yoga training, I went back to corporate and then I was in that car accident and I had to stop teaching. And it was like this light bulb or like, I don't know what the word is, like epiphany of like, well, who am I if I'm not teaching yoga? Like that's what I built, what I thought I was going to be doing. And it's like we have to really peel back those layers of labeling ourselves and putting ourselves in this mold of, okay, well, I've said I'm a yoga teacher, so now I can't do other things. It's like, what else makes you happy? And for me, like traveling and the Airbnb thing is something I absolutely love. And people thought I was crazy when I was going to start an Airbnb in a small town. But it's like at the end of the day, you have to do what makes you happy and align with those things that you have skills in. Maybe it's not exactly going to fit into your yoga box, but in a way it does because you're going to be attracting those other kind of people into your life as well. So there's been a lot of like, now that it's kind of all working together, there's been a lot of overlapping as far as with my network marketing company. Like there's a healthy living program that a lot of my yoga clients naturally become interested in. And you don't have to be super salesy. It's like people are attracted to who you are and they ask for referrals from people they know, like, and trust. So that's something that's just kind of been a natural fit and works really well together. And then with the Airbnb, it's like I can put that I teach yoga and people have requested to do private yogas when they're here staying at the Airbnb. So it's really, it feels really good when things kind of, they're separate, but in a way they all kind of work together at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that something that you touched on that I think is really important to kind of draw away from this is, people thinking like you're crazy and I can't believe you're going to do this and that's a weird idea. And I think that there's always going to be people who don't really like fully understand what you're doing.
Yes.
And it's important that if you know that something's right for you to move forward with it and to continue with it. And I think that it's so hard in this world where we're so digitally connected, right? And people have so many
Mhm.
opinions and they always have something to say and whatnot. And, I'm not excluded from that. I have opinions too and whatnot. But it's like you kind of have to be able to focus inwards and put your head down a little bit to kind of figure out what is right for you. Because at the end of the day, like people can give you advices or, tell you what they think is best, but only you can really figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this year, because I've had so much growth, like just myself having to, really pivot and lean into what this year has done to a lot of business owners, right? It really is forced people to expand and try new things. And it hasn't been easy by any means, but as you grow and then, you're doing new things, putting yourself out there, you're going to always be met with opinions. And so it's brought up a lot. I would say this year was also a lot of just really finding my own way and being really proud and happy with who I am, regardless if 100% of people agree with me. At the end of the day, they're not living my life. They're not paying my bills. They're not, married to me. So my husband is very supportive. And we always say that is like, we support each other. And if you have one person who you can really lean on and have those honest conversations with, and that's more than enough. And so it really, I think, as a business owner, your skin toughens a little bit by not taking on other people's emotions and opinions. And that's something I'm a very, like, I'm an empath. And so I've always felt people's energy and emotions. And I'm learning, it's not always easy, but I'm learning that all I can do is control, how I interpret things and perceive things. And if I'm doing what makes me happy and it's being well received by my community, then that's all that matters at the end of the day. Because you're never going to have, 100% of people agree with you either way. So it's like, if I stop doing certain things, maybe some people would agree with me. And then I have the other people on the other side saying, well, why aren't you doing that anymore? You were great at that. So you really just have to, like you said, go with your own intuition and what lights you up. And for me, like, I'm really, my business and the things that I am passionate about, like, they do light me up and I feel very on purpose. And so that's a great place to be. I feel like I'm growing and I'm aligned with just becoming the best person I can be and really feeling freedom in my life. And that's what the whole goal of, like, when I started this business was, to heal and to feel more free and more joy. And slowly, it's like, as I've done this, the interesting thing is that I don't focus on having a disease as much and it doesn't show up as much in my life. The more I'm just focused on the things that make me happy. There's a very interesting correlation there that I think we can get so lost in, doing things and having to be a certain way based on society that we really lose who we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can really, really resonate with all those words. I think there's a lot of shoulds out there. And I mean, I know I'm just as human as the next person. It's so easy to get caught up in what you should be doing in your business. And I think this has been some of the inner work I've been trying to do over the last couple of months. And it's hard to tune out all the noise, I think.
It is.
There's so many people telling you what you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing. And it's really hard to tune in.
Yeah. You know what I always think of, like, when I talk about this with people and like-minded people like you is, have you read Brene Brown's work or?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've read all of her books except maybe her most recent one.
Yeah. And I always come back to that quote is like, if they're not in the arena with you, like actually fighting the battle in the arena, then, their opinion doesn't matter. Like, it's the people outside and up in the stands that are trying to tell the person down in the arena what to do. And that's why I really value people's opinion. Like, when I was in the mastermind, like, those are the kind of people who I know are putting themselves out there and are facing like the same kind of emotions and challenges, like you're saying as well. Like, those are the kind of people who all value their honest feedback. But for someone who's not even in this space to be telling me what I should or shouldn't be doing or not understanding certain aspects, like, one thing, and I'm sure you can relate on some level, is, you're building a business. And so you have to put yourself out there. Like, people have to be able to get to know you a little bit. So there's a lot of social media. I actually really like social media. I definitely take my space and I turn off my notifications. But I've had, a few friends or family members unfollow me because, I don't know, they, in some way, maybe they think it's annoying to be talking about certain things and they hear it multiple times. But it's like, I'm building a business. So you have to just tread on without thinking about those few people who might be unfollowing you or not resonating with your message. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not building a business for them. I'm building a business for me, but also connecting with the right kind of people who resonate with my message. So those are the hard lessons, right? Of not everyone's going to get it. And I think, especially in yoga, is like we have so much passion for what we do that like we want to serve others. And not everyone is ready to sometimes hear your message. But what I've learned this year too is like when people leave or, unfollow you or this or that, it actually means like you're getting more in line with like your message. You're getting like more niched to who you want to serve, and those people are showing up and new people are coming, and like some people are going to fall away, and that's okay. I'm not the right teacher for everyone. Just like I've, resonated with some teachers, some people's message. Sometimes I unfollow people too. And it's like we all have choice, and to not take it personally is something I still won't say I have 100% down, but because I'm only human. And, I think it's our innate human response to want to be loved and liked by people. But that's the way it is, right? And so the one thing that I know I can do is focus on why it bothers me if somebody unfollows me. And that's where it's like very freeing when you can uncover and release that resistance.
Yeah, 100%. You said that so beautifully and so eloquently. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I love the analogy of who's actually in the ring with you.
Yeah.
I think that that's an important one to take away. So I hope that that's hit home with somebody else the way that it has with me. And Amy, I just appreciate you sharing all of this. If people want to learn more about you or check out your membership or anything that you're up to, where can they go to find all of that?
So on Instagram, I am at yoga_with_Amy. And my my website is Amy Juline, AMYJULIENNE.com. And from there, you can reach out to me and it will connect you, onto Facebook, Instagram, and all the things I'm up to.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation. This has been really awesome.
Yeah, well, I love getting to chat, deep dive into these things, and really glad that we got to connect, and thank you for having me.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Amy. Make sure you go and check out all the amazing things that she is up to. If you would like to hear more from Amy, we continued the conversation on M.B.Om behind the scenes, talking a little bit about her process for finding her niche. So having a niche is something we talk a lot about on the podcast. It's one of the things I definitely recommend for yoga teachers as they build their businesses, but it's also easier said than done in a lot of ways. And so Amy talks a little bit about her process for niching down, discovering her ideal client, and all of that good stuff. So if you would like to hear that, you can head on over to patreon.com/M.B.Om yoga. I would love to see you over there. And of course, once you sign up, you get access to this episode plus all past episodes. As well, I would like to give a huge shout out and a huge thank you again to our sponsor, OfferingTree. If you'd like to start spending more time with students and less time with software, head on over to OfferingTree.com/M.B.Om to get an exclusive discount. And of course, thank you for listening to this episode of the show. I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.